This is Andy Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by trainer Tony Sims over Zoom. Tony, it's good to see you. You've got a busy weekend ahead of you, so how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks, Andy. Uh, yeah, as you say, I've got George Liddard and Jimmy Sains both boxing tomorrow night.
Let's just start off with that. Start off with Jimmy Sains, looking to go 7-0. What are you hoping he shows in his next outing?
Uh, just keep improving, really. He's 6-0 at the minute. He's young and he's just learning, really. These are all just learning fights. So as long as he keeps improving in the gym and then learning from his experiences in the ring, that's the main thing, really.
He was pulled up on in a press conference yesterday, 6 fights, 6 knockouts, kind of a perfect start for him. But is it starting to get to that point where you want to see him going more rounds, basically, get those rounds under his belt?
Yeah, well, the last fight went into the last round anyway. Was it the fifth or the sixth round? So he got a few rounds under his belt in the last fight. The guy he's fighting tomorrow night, he's really durable. He's been in with Austin Trout. He had a tough fight with Carl Fowl last time out. So he's quite a durable fighter.
Of course, you got George Liddard as well. Same with him. What does George need to show tomorrow night at the next stage in his development?
Uh, yeah, George is the same really. He's just developing at the minute, young fighter. Um, he's 8-0 at the minute, and he's just developing the same thing. Really, just keep learning, keep improving. He's got a decent opponent tomorrow in Jules Davey. He's I watched him against Joshua Frankham, and he had a good fight with him. He was a very close fight. So he's got a hard fight tomorrow, and it's a decent fight for him at this stage of his career.
Both George and Jimmy up and coming talents, same weight class. What's it like in their gym, Tony? Is there that competitive edge? Is it difficult to separate them?
Yeah, it's they're both competitive, but they're both different styles of fighters. So they're just learning. They're bringing each other on. They train next to each other, and they run together, and they live nearby each other. So it's good training for both of them, really, learning training.
Obviously, over the last couple of years, Tony, you've had some fighters leave. You've got quite a relatively young stable now. Obviously, Conor Benn is more of kind of a senior pro, if you will, in your gym, and he's still only young himself. How are you finding this kind of transitioning period as a trainer, having so many more youngsters coming through as opposed to maybe those more senior and experienced fighters?
Yeah, there's always turns and roundabouts with it, and it, the the fighters get old and then the young come through, and it's always been like that. And once upon a time, all my other fighters was young aspiring pros, and then they just after a few years of being a pro and win titles, and then they retire, and then the next ones come through, and it's just like boxing's like a revolving door. It just keeps revolving, and you get the young pros come through, and it's good because they're like, just say for instance, Jimmy and Jules, they've sparred with all the old pros that I've had in the past. So they've gained experience doing that quality sparring. So um, and they as the years go by, they'll get older, and then you'll get young fighters come through again. So it just keeps going.
Just recently had a similar conversation with Mark Tibbs because he has a relatively young stable as well. Um, but does it for yourself? Does it ever get to that point of constantly having like a rebirth of a new cycle of young fighters coming through? Do you have in your own mind kind of a cut off because in Mark's case, I said to him, his fighters could be there for 10, 15 years because they're so young, and you have similar fighters at similar ages, you could be around for that long as well. Do you have a cut off as to kind of when you see being that's enough now, no more fighters coming in?
I don't know why you're enjoying it. You're still going to do it. Like, same as Mark. Why you're enjoying it and enjoying the training. Obviously, I've got John Ryder with me now as an assistant, so he's a lot younger than me. So but yeah, no, I'm still enjoying it and enjoying giving my experience to the young ones. And we've signed in more young fighters, so as we go along, there'll be even younger ones than we've got now. So it's all learning for them really in the gym.
Obviously, as we mentioned, Connor's kind of more of a senior pro in the gym now. Before we come on to him, somebody who you had worked with and you've recently kind of parted ways is Joe Cordina. What can you tell me on your behalf as to you guys parting ways and obviously just looking back on what was a successful chapter in your careers together?
Yeah, we had an amicable split. When obviously when he lost the last fight, he just wanted to have a change and go somewhere else. So he won two world titles with me, and he just wanted to do something different. So I wished him all the best, and I hope he recaptures the world title in his career, and and goes on to do what he wants to do in life. As you say, he had a good 7 or 8 years with me, and he done really well. So yeah, it was all good.
He spoke highly of Coventry the time together because whenever I get told about it, he had a quite a close relationship with yourself, but with your family as well. He used to kind of, allow him to go and stay with you guys and what have you whenever he's over in Essex. Is it difficult to obviously you build a relationship like that with a fighter, but then you do part ways? Is it difficult to deal with at times?
Um, Not really, because like we both probably felt that we was like done everything we both could together. Really, do you know what I mean? So it's nothing to do with friendship or anything like that. It's just like business, and that's what it is really. And he felt he needed a change, and probably he did. And as I say, hopefully he'll go on to achieve another world title. But a lot of my old fighters that have been with me for years, and then they've retired or moved on. I still keep in touch with most of them. Most of them still at least once a month message me or ring me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you always stay in touch through the years. It's just it's one of them sports where unfortunately it's a short window of achieving success. If you look at a pro fighter's career, is probably maximum like 10 years, a good career. So it's a very short window for them to achieve what they need to achieve and financially secure themselves. And I'm pleased to play a small part in their life of the 10 years, really. But, as you say, people move on, and, but luckily a lot of mine still keep in touch with me.
Obviously, recently we've seen the likes of Felix Cash, Craig Richards, who I know obviously worked with your brother, but you was involved as well. Step between ropes, but fall short in their fights. Is it difficult to see them kind of not have that successful run that you hope for when they do go in a different direction away from yourself?
That both them fighters you named there both had a lot of success with me, and with us in the stable. And sometimes they feel like they need to move on and try something different. Sometimes it works out for them, and sometimes it don't. Whether them fights, if they're both them fighters would have stayed with me, whether they'd been different, I don't know. They probably would have been the same, but who knows? But you got to all do what you got want to do in life, and you know, I thought they both of them picked out good stables and good trainers, and I hope they was going to win both them big fights they was in, but like you say, they both fell short. But I don't think it's a lot to do with where they moved to, really.
Just with Joe, obviously he was due to fight Shakur Stevenson before Shakur had to pull out through injury. Uh, it would have been a very difficult ask of Joe, but what did you make of that matchup? How would you have rated Joe's chances with Shakur Stevenson if it had gone ahead?
Well, I think the fight was always spoke about from going back from when Joe first won the IBF title. The fight was Shakur was a super featherweight then, so I think it was spoke about. Shakur obviously knew of Joe from the Olympics and that, so it was always spoke about that fight. It just come to chance that Joe moved up a weight, and then obviously the fight came about. But Shakur Stevenson is a great fighter, and he's a very talented, and obviously he's a tough fight for anyone to fight him. But listen, it's a shame it fell through because I'd like to have watched that fight myself.
Away from Joe and obviously on to Conor. We know that in August they had the appeal process going through. So what can you fill us in on, Tony? What can you tell us as to where things ended up with it all?
Yeah, so through by the end of this month, the hearings and everything should all be over, and hopefully that'll be the end of it, and then he'll hopefully get back on track with his career.
What exactly is kind of this hearing process been then? So you had your appeal going in August, and what's the kind of not necessarily the outcome, but the ongoing kind of situation now? Is it just still being debated by the appeals panel? But what can you tell us on that front?
No, because the UK had won the appeal, and so they was pre-hearings. So the UK had won the appeal, and now he goes to the full hearing next month. So once the full hearing's over and done with, and then we'll see what happens from them, really.
How optimistic are you guys that this will be the positive outcome you're hoping for?
Yeah, very optimistic, and I'll just be pleased to hear the end of it, really, because one way or the other it's going to be the end of it. So I'll just be pleased to see the end of it, and then let him reignite his career again.
We obviously saw a photo of Connor with Eddie, Frank Warren, Turki Al Sheikh recently. Are conversations taking place behind closed doors about potential fights? Obviously, an obvious one being with Chris Eubank Jr.
Not at the moment, because obviously we've got to wait to see what the outcome, of his hearing is. But hopefully by the time the hearing's finished, and then he, once he gets his license back, and then everyone can start negotiating.
If it is that positive outcome you hope for, Tony, have you got kind of a date in mind when Connor could return? I imagine you want him out at least once before the year's out.
Yeah, I mean that'll be up to Matchroom and to get the date sorted. But as I say, we can't really make any moves until the hearing's over.
And then, of course, just away from him, as we get you thoughts on this past weekend, we saw Anthony Joshua lose to Daniel Dubois in quite a stunning and dominant fashion. What did you make of it?
Yeah, well, obviously going into the fight, I think everyone favoured Joshua because of the experience and that he's had in the ring and the amount of world title fights he had. But I think everybody agreed that Daniel Dubois was always in with a puncher's chance in that fight. Um, and I think he's probably learned in his last few fights. He had the defeat against Usyk, which many people probably thought he was winning that fight. And he probably learned from that experience. He had a tough fight against Miller, and he had a tough fight um, against Ergovic last time out. And he probably learned from them fights. And it was just his time. It was time to, a young fighter coming through to take on the veteran, really. And history tells us, if we look at history, is that what happened? We watched Ali, we watched Larry Holmes, we watched Tyson. It all happens in the same wave that the old the old veteran always gets beat by the up and young coming fighter, and it just keeps turning over like that. And I think we see that Saturday, and I think AJ put everything into the fight. As much he was hurt quite a few times in that fight, and he tried his hardest to win, and that's his fighting heart. But as we see, the young gun in Dubois, he was relentless, and he just didn't really leave him alone. It was like one round after the other, big bombs on him, and obviously the punch that finished him was a short right hand, and it was a great shot, and he deserved the victory, and and he's an exciting fighter, and he's the sort of fighter that you want to go and watch. And I'm sure he's going to be in a lot of exciting fights down the road.
You mentioned how kind of again the cycle process of the young guy coming through will eventually catch the older, more experienced one at some point. On that note, do you think if we saw a rematch, it would go in a similar fashion?
Well, like you say there, I would think so. Um, I would think so. I think Dubois is a dangerous fighter. He, as you say, he's young and up and coming, and I just think, I'd like to see Joshua win because Joshua's a good friend of mine and an old fighter out of train. But like you say, history tells us differently, and I think it'll be very tough to try and rematch that fight and come on top after what happened the other night. It's just it's a young man's game, this game, and I think he's got a massive future in front of him, Daniel Dubois.
Um, what is there a way for you to kind of break down what we saw on Saturday night, or did you feel like after that first knockdown, it was kind of the writing was on the wall and AJ just couldn't quite kind of regather himself and get back into that fight?
Yeah, like you say, that first knockdown, I think, it was heavy. It was a big overhand right, and it was a big shot. And we know how hard Dubois can hit, and it was a heavy shot. And like you say, I don't think he recovered from that. I think he was getting hurt through the rounds, and but he was trying his hardest to get back into the fight. Obviously, before the knockout, he caught Dubois a good shot, but Dubois quite kind of was shaking them shots off. I mean, it was a big shot he got caught with, flush, and I thought, oh, is he hurt there? But he kind of just shook it off. He took another right hand and shook it off again, and just blasted back with his own. And that's what youth's about. Like when you're that young, and the desire is so great, you can go walk through shots sometimes, and you know, I thought it was just a really great, inspiring performance by him, and through that, he'll gain a lot of confidence, and he'll probably be a better fighter after that fight.
Tony, as I'm sure you've kind of had yourself in your career, when somebody loses of a high profile note, people look for somebody to blame. There's criticisms thrown around, and there's been a few critics of Ben Davison. What do you make of anybody who has critiqued Ben, and do you feel like it's harsh to do so?
I think Ben's a great young trainer, and he's a good guy as well. And if you if you look before that fight, Ben was like, everyone was saying Ben was the great trainer, and the best trainer Joshua's had, and blah blah blah. So that's what it's like with the win. You got to take the losses with the wins. With the wins, everyone's pumping you up, and then with the losses, everyone puts you down. So as a trainer, you just got to be able to take that criticism. At the end of the day, whatever you tell your fighter or whatever you're instructing him, it's him that goes out and has to do it. And you can't get in there and actually throw the punches for your fighter and move your head for the fighter. And I think Ben's got a great future in front of him as a trainer, and people are always going to criticise you on your defeats.
On a side note, how pleased are you for Don Charles? Obviously, he's been in and around the heavyweights for a long time as a trainer, and that for him is arguably, he may have even said it himself, like kind of his greatest night in the sport.
Oh, about that, I was really pleased with Don. Funny enough, I messaged him the other day. He's been in the game as long as I have, and to see him have success late in his career like that, because I know what trainers put into this sport, which other people don't see. They put long hours in away from their families, and I was really really pleased for him the other day. I mean, he's a really nice guy and a good guy as well, and he deserves all the credit he gets.
Just moving away from that one fight on the horizon, I want to get your thoughts on Tony. Beterbiev Bivol, undisputed light heavyweight title fight. What do you think happens? Who comes out on top?
Oh, it's a great fight, Andy. I'm really looking forward to watching that one. And it's a tough fight to call because we've seen both these fighters shine so much, and obviously the win against Canelo for Bivol was obviously the highlight of his career, and he boxed so well that night. And then Beterbiev, like we know that he's knocked every opponent out he's ever faced, so it's going to be a great fight. I think I'm going to lean slightly towards Beterbiev with his punching power late on in the fight, but as I say, like Joshua Dubois, I wouldn't, you couldn't say who's going to win. I mean, Bivol's got all the ability in the world, and it's definitely a 50-50 fight.
Appreciate your time now. I'm going to leave you to enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for speaking to me, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers, mate.